I wanted to get to the other stuff, but yeah. Okay, let's get into what's happening right now. I wanted to go to the live footage just to see if there's been any new recent developments.
Among Syrians, that Israel could take advantage of the situation in order to advance and capture new areas in Syria under the pretext of protecting its own border. For now, they have been just signaling that anyone who will get closer to the conflicting lines and violate those lines will be dealt with harshly. Now, we don't know whether there is some sort of back channels between Israel and some of the groups to ensure that the conflicting lines will not be violated. If we go back to a couple of years ago, when opposition groups controlled that area, they had some sort of, at least some of the groups there had contact with Israel and maintained some sort of understanding that did not lead to escalation between the two. So here we have the possibility of, again, reaching some sort of agreement through back channels in order to give them the assurances that they need in order not to expand and basically occupy new territories in Syria. But if that fails, we might see that happening. And I think the role of the international community as well as regional actors will be...
Israel is literally the only country in our day and age that is annexing or attempting to annex other sovereign nations by claiming we're trying to defend ourselves. We're trying to defend ourselves. We're trying to defend ourselves. Not even Russia is saying it that they're trying to defend themselves. Russia's claim is more that that these areas already sort of belong to Russia. They made a little bit of that narrative, but oh, and then that they're trying to remove like the Nazis from Ukraine, right? Whereas Israel's only stance is, no, it's self-defense.
Here in order to ensure that there will be no escalation on the southern front.
Okay, Ibrahim, of course, Iran and Russia, huge allies of Syria traditionally. What does this mean for that relationship going forward?
Well, it's going to be kind of a nuanced, I think, complicated relationship because they have taken sides. It's not that the Syrian people have decided to, take a side against them.
Israel doesn't need an excuse. PR is America's job. Yeah, we're so bitch-made to Israel.
It's them that they've decided to kind of prop up Assad. I mean, we've seen already some of the armed groups, HDS included, that give assurances to Russia that we know no one is going to kind of harm Russian interests. We've seen reassurances on Iranian and Russian consulates. We've also seen withdrawal of a lot of Iranian military advisors and a lot of Iranian presence in Damascus and in Aleppo and in Homs and in other places. It's now the time for really kind of careful politics. I don't think anyone is in the business of antagonizing any party that could further destabilize Syria. We need to focus on what's next. We need to focus on accountability for the crimes. We need to focus on all the kind of transitional efforts, political and from a human rights perspective. And we need to now start working towards the Syria we all once dreamed of, a Syria that is free from tyranny,
a lot of discussions
and a Syria
to be
that represents us all. And,
you're right, a lot of discussions to be had.
Today.
Yeah, but these regional implications are also quite important. Hind, I'll just come over to you. Just talk to us about Lebanon and Iraq now and the impact potentially on those countries. And Lebanon, of course, when it comes to the resistance, Syria was a major lifeline for the resistance in Lebanon. What happens next?
No, what happened? Lebanon, actually, it is being very sensitive. But today, the Lebanese people are celebrating in the street for the Syrian victory. So our Lebanese people there, and they're being relieved by all what's happening. Now we have to be careful. But I want to emphasize that we need to keep dialogue with everybody. We cannot close any doors. Diplomacy is diplomacy. We need the help of everybody, internationals and regional powers, to help
when
our
you say you need the help of everybody, when you look at the regional options, when you say you need the help of everybody, what country, in your opinion, from the region or perhaps outside the region, should step in now to play a constructive role going forward?
First, I just want to keep the Syrian-owned and Syrian-led process. I want to be Syrian. This is my priority, and this is what I want. And for me, we won't never, ever forget who are the countries who stood by us in the past. And they are the one, I'm grateful to them. We're all thank them because when everybody abandoned us and they didn't think that we're going to be where we are today, they did believe in us and they stood by us. And we have a list of countries, especially where I am today here, Qatar. And we thank them, we thank Turkey, we thank the EU, we thank everybody. But the most important things today, we want the help and support to build Syria.
Let me just jump in there for the sake of time. My apologies, but hey, it's final thoughts from you on Turkey.
The refugees to go back, the refugees, they need to go back,
Okay, Hayed, final thought from you on Turkey. Hind just mentioning Turkey. What do you see as Turkey's role going forward, and how involved has Turkey been in all these recent developments?
Well, Turkey will definitely be...
Grandparents can get buried in their own land.
Yeah. I wanted to do a little bit of catch up with you guys on the Syrian war and on the conflict that has been brewing for decades in Syria. The refugees, Syrian refugees. There are a lot of Syrian refugees. I've met a good handful of Syrian refugees that have had to flee their country, and for, at the very least, a very long period of time could not return. I wanted to watch the Syrian rebel leaders saying that their goal was to overthrow the Assad regime, which they have now successfully done so. I mean, let's watch this one and then we can watch how it played out. This was actually from 2 days ago.
Syrian rebel forces have now taken over Hama. That is the second major city they've captured since launching a surprise offensive last week. Syria's military says its troops had to withdraw from Hama after rebels entered several parts of the city in another blow to President Bashar al-Assad. Now, rebel fighters also freed hundreds of prisoners, saying they were all wrongfully detained. Some residents in Hama are now celebrating the rebel takeover.
Thank God, we've been waiting for this day for a long time, and we're all coming out on the street. This is the happiest day for us. We were afraid to go out at night. We've been waiting for this.
Imagine having a Hamas leader interview on CNN. CNN would never do that. They're way too bitch-made to do something like that. The reason that they're cool with doing this, that they're cool with bringing on rebel leaders for against the state of Syria, is because it helps push the narrative that, like, these brown countries are uncivilized and they're dictators, and look at how these people have to struggle to fight against these people. Ugh, isn't it terrible?
That can't be described. It's been 50 years we've been suffering injustice and crime and oppression. This is a historic moment, a priceless moment.
Priceless moment. Now, rebels are vowing to push further south to Homs. That is the next major city on the road to the capital, Damascus. CNN's Jemana Karatse sat down for an exclusive interview with the main rebel leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. He says the Assad regime is, in his words, dead, and explains how his forces have been able to sweep through Syria.
Taking Hama, after taking Aleppo, I mean, how significant is this for you right now?
From a military perspective, what comes after Hama will not be the same as what came before. However, I prefer not to be overly optimistic during the battle. I like to remain cautious and vigilant to avoid complacency and ensure we don't suffer losses while believing we are safe.
What comes after this? What's after Hama?
The course of the battle, as for the secrets of the battle, let's leave them to the unfolding events. You will witness them in reality, which is better than discussing them now.
In a matter of days, you have taken major cities. What's changed? How are you able to do this now?
In recent years, there has been a unification of internal opinions and the establishment of institutional structures within the liberated areas of Syria. This institutionalization included the restructuring within military factions. They entered unified training camps.
Why would CNN platform a rebel leader? Oh, I'm sure that they would give other rebel leaders a microphone to talk about their positions. Ha 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 ha.
And developed a sense of discipline. This discipline allowed them, with God's guidance, to engage in a battle in an organized manner. The progress and execution of plans have been swift, with clear communication and adherence to commands. They stop where they should stop and withdraw where they should withdraw. The revolution has transitioned from chaos and randomness to a state of order, both in civil and institutional matters and in military operations alike.
Some believe this is happening because the allies of the Assad regime, the Russians, Hezbollah, Iran, that they're weakened, they're preoccupied with other wars. And this is why we are seeing this happen right now. And the Syrian regime itself weakened. Is this what is happening right now? Is this why you chose to launch this offensive right now?
As you know, we are still in the midst of the battle, and discussing such details at this time is not wise.
But you faced more of a resistance in Hama than you did in Aleppo. What do you think happened? Why did the regime withdraw like it did?
The seeds of the regime's defeat have always been within it. It has been effectively dead since that time. However, the Iranians attempted to revive the regime, buying it time, and later the Russians also tried to prop it up. But the truth remains, this regime is dead.
In the last year, it seemed like Bashar al-Assad survived the war. He was welcomed back into the Arab fold and on the world stage.
The Arab countries' evaluation of the situation was mistaken. Some Arab countries try to separate the regime from Iran's project. This is impossible. Even if the regime wanted this, it can't implement it. It's a subservient relationship. Iran can disengage from the regime, but the regime can't. To describe the regime as victorious is deeply unjust to the many children, people, women subjected to rape in prisons, displaced individuals scattered across the world, those drowning in the seas, and those living in tents on the borders of other countries. What kind of victory are we talking about?
In the past, you have talked about strict Islamic rule. Is that still the plan?
People who fear Islamic governance either have seen incorrect implementations of it or do not understand it properly. We are talking about something that aligns with the traditions and nature of the region. The most important thing is to build institutions. We are not talking about rule by individuals or personal whims. It's about institutional governance. Syria deserves a governing system that is institutional, not one where a single ruler makes arbitrary decisions.
Many Syrians are happy.
And this is like the biggest problem with basically every single country that has attempted to get rid of their monarchs or their dictators in the Arab world. It's that the U.S. likes to prop up and help, and I'm sure in a few years we will see the Western intervention that occurred in Syria to help prop up the religious extremists, which I'm not saying that these people are. It's hard to say because you won't know until after the fact, so that we can further justify our mistreatment of these people. Because the thing is, what he's talking about, like running a nation based on religion, based on Islam, it's very like wishful thinking. And there are a lot of countries that have whatever Americans would consider Sharia law. that are fine to visit and go to, and there isn't this like dictator relationship with its people, right? A lot of the nations on the western coast of North Africa have religious rule, but these nations are not like oppressive by any means. Like there is absolutely progressive policy that can be enacted slowly but surely. And this is also the reason why like people hate accelerationists and people hate like revolutionaries who don't believe in any attempt at democratic change. It's because you cannot know for certain who will obtain power after the fighting is done.
Be happy to see the end of the Assad regime, but they're also worried about what HTS rule would mean, including minorities.
No one has the right to erase another group. These sects have coexisted in this region for hundreds of years, and no one has the right to eliminate them. There must be a legal framework that
You are saying you're saying religious rule is good? What the fuck? I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
protects and ensures the rights of all, not a system that serves only one sect, as Assad's regime has done.
You know, listening to you speaking, you've gone through quite the transformation. Once an Al-Qaeda leader, your group has had affiliations with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, and now you are projecting this image of a moderate leader and a moderate group. What is HTS right now?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is one of the factions in the region, just like all the others. Now we're talking about a larger project. We're talking about building Syria. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is merely one detail of this dialogue, and it may dissolve at any time. It's not an end in itself, but a means to perform a task confronting this regime. Once that task is complete, it will transition to a state of governance, institutions, and so on. I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experiences, and these experiences naturally increase a person's awareness. A person in their 20s will have a different personality than someone in their 30s or 40s, and certainly someone in their 50s.
So are those days behind you?
Sometimes it's essential to adjust to reality, and because someone who rigidly clings to certain ideas and principles without flexibility cannot effectively lead societies or navigate complex conflicts like the one happening in Syria.
People listening to this are going to wonder why they should...
John McCain's fabled moderate rebels, yeah. Oh, God. How my weird chatter? She just said Sharia isn't always bad, but that is religious rule. No. I'm saying that what I said was that religious rule is not always oppressive. Like explicitly and harshly in the way that we think of like Iran. It is not always like oppressive relative to Western nations, if that makes sense. Like Western nations, our oligarchs, our effective oligarchs, and the people we have in power are very oppressive. You can have a religious nation that is as oppressive as our current government, as Western governments, as non-religious governments. The problem is that, and this is true of every single uprising against any type of theocracy or dictatorship. The people who are the best at strategizing and fighting and overthrowing are not the best people at running a government. That the ability to overthrow a government has nothing to do with the ability to run a good government. Oman is a religious total monarchy, and the people love the king, and it's one of the safest tourist destinations on the planet. These things are case by case, I feel. I mean, it's same exact thing about China, right? Like the West loves to look at China and be like, look at China, look. They love to kill their own people. They're the most dictator. They only have one party. Oh my God, we need to do something about this. Xi Jinping. And it's like, first of all, you don't even live in China. You're just reading some fucking articles by Bloomberg and then saying what you feel like saying. Okay? All right, can we just start there just really quickly for just to begin with, okay? As a Tunisian, I got to say that North Africa doesn't have religious rule in the way that West thinks. Definitely some inspirations from the Quran, but there's a number of secular laws. There is skill issues that, in my estimation, stem more from social conservatism that would be solved through more material stability. Sorry for reposting. No. This is exactly the point that I'm trying to highlight. So, as someone who has roots to a country that is ruled primarily by religion, and as someone who has visited this country, people's understanding of Sharia and Sharia law is they literally think this is a perfect example here. So I'll break it down and I'll explain it a little bit better. This is my bad for not explaining it well. People still can. What are you talking about? And with full Sharia, women can't get education, drive, etc. There's no such thing as full Sharia. That's not a thing. That doesn't exist. Sharia law is basically just saying that we should build our rules around the Quran. Okay? And if you go to Sharia law countries, so like Tunis or Morocco, which I've been to, these countries are not as regressive as people seem to think that they are. Like, this is not, you should go and look at what the country is like or watch videos of what the country is like before you make commentary about this stuff. Like, let me see if I can find a good, maybe this is a good, like, little walking video. And this is a religious country. Well, Morocco was doing a genocide. Dude, you didn't even spell Morocco correctly. You didn't even spell it correctly, dude.
When your full Sharia is laissez-faire, the Prophet says, as Allah wills.
This is a country that is 99.6% Muslim.
I've come to Casablanca, a port city on the western Atlantic coastline of Morocco, and the country's biggest metropolis. Many visitors to Morocco skip Casablanca and head straight to the tourist hotspots of Marrakesh and Fez. But I've come here to seek out authentic Moroccan life, but, you know, for Ramadan.
Like, people think that these countries are so regressive that none of these women can drive, none of these women can vote, none of these women can work, you can't dress. She's dressed like a normal American.
People want something special. You have, like, maybe the wealthier people
walking around markets. Watch out, lady, it's dangerous there.
People that want to be a bit more economical will choose, you know, turkey and then chickens as well.
The point that I'm trying to make is pretty straightforward and pretty, like, simple, which is just when these people, rebel leaders, try and take down dictators and people who are unhappy. Sorry, they're trying to take down leaders who the population is generally unhappy with. In their head, what they're trying to get is this. That's their goal. Their goal is, no, we all agree that Islam is Pog, and we should have that, and we should be a good Muslim country, and there are a lot of good values that the Quran teaches us. And their dream is to have a country like this. That's like, we follow what God intends and we have a good country that God would want. But we also have like a thriving market, amazing tourist destinations. People get to enjoy life. It's just we build our laws and our policies and our morals around this religious rule. And by religious rule here, I mean, you know, the same way that Americans talk about like Christianity and yeah, you should do what Jesus wanted or whatever, right? They're just doing liberalism with their own flavor that they're used to. Yeah, there is, I don't know how to explain that the difference between a country like this, that's primary religion is Islam, is no different than a country like, is very, very similar to a country like the US, which has its, has theocracy baked into our political institutions. They are bad in the same way. In the same way that Americans having abortion rights rolled back by the religious South. Women in these countries, yeah, they don't have as many rights, but you can progressively change that and improve it. It's not inherently bad. And this is coming from someone who thinks that, like, in general, this is my most atheist opinion. In general, if I could snap my fingers and there would be no religion ever, I would choose that. Because I do think that religion has a particular brain rot. And it's easier to control people with religion because you get to lord over them that they're going to go to hell forever. This is coming from that's from this perspective. I also, however, recognize that religion isn't going to go anywhere. And even if you did do that, what I'm talking about, it probably will come back eventually. Okay? People would immediately reinvent religion, except it would be a different religion or a new one or whatever. And also, people's religious freedoms should be protected. If it's going to exist anyways, people's religious freedoms should be protected. So yeah, that's what the point that I'm trying to drive home, though, what I'm trying to explain is, like, you can have a progressive country that has its religious roots in Islam. And a lot of these people who are trying to overthrow dictators or overthrow monarchs in a lot of these nations, that's their goal. Their goal is to have a good, you know, like, family values type of country that, you know, believes in Islam and all this other stuff and tries to do the best that it can for all its people. It doesn't mean that it has to be regressive. It doesn't mean that it has to be women can't drive and they can't vote and they can't go outside unless they're wearing a niqab, or like, that doesn't inherently come with that. So if you just say Sharia law regressive, that's it. Easy. It's a bit of an oversimplification. Women have only been able to vote in the West for 100 years. I mean, dude, like, the thing is, it's like, you have to understand, like, the perspective of these people, right? So, like, this goes back to analysis, right? If you speak to people who are Muslim, the perspective of a lot of people who are Muslim who've either immigrated or live there, they will tell you that they believe that a lot of these laws or a lot of the public opinions about things are there to protect women. So one example, right? In America, you can date pretty freely, right? You can kind of see whoever you want to see, go on as many dates as you want to go on. No one's going to stop you. You can have sex with however many people you want to have sex with. And also, to be clear, that's only a recent development in the West. In Muslim countries, not so much, right? If anyone knows anyone who's Muslim or knows anything about the region, not so much. You can, in some countries, you can go on dates. In the more progressive countries, you can go on dates with people. But in general, you kind of only start to see someone if you are actually planning on getting married. That is a policy that is put in place that the people who put it in place believe they are doing it to protect women. Are they right? I don't think so, personally. I think that that's not good policy, but that's their perspective. That's why they're doing it. That's why that's why it's there. That's the reason that it's there. And if you talk to people who are Muslim, they will tell you that is the reason that it's there. It's because they don't want the women there to be controlled by the men there. And to be clear, it's bad policy and that's wrong. And you should let people do what they want to do. And I would like to think that in the long term, it is better for women's rights that they can do what they want to do. However, that's the reason it's there is not we need to control women and stop them from doing anything that they want to do. If you speak to a lot of the people who agree with the laws, they will tell you, no, that's there to protect women. I wouldn't want my daughter to start seeing someone and then they are not interested in her anymore. And then she has to date for a decade and she struggles to find someone to settle down with or whatever, right? That's their perspective. Is it a wrong perspective? Yes, correct. But the perspective isn't there because they're like, I fucking hate women. I fucking hate women. Now, in some Muslim countries, that is the perspective. Just like in some southern states, the perspective is absolutely just, I want to control women's bodies and stop them from getting abortions. But it's very reductive to pretend like every single person who thinks that Islam is good and thinks that laws built around Islam are good. It's very reductive to assume that all those people just want to control women. It's just not an accurate understanding of what these people think. And if you don't have an accurate understanding of what these people think, you will never come up with an accurate solution. The absence of religion only creates a vacuum, which will inevitably be filled by human beings. Some people choose their own new religion. Yeah, the problem is, like I said, religion, I think, is uniquely worse because it comes with the threat of eternal suffering, right? So you can get people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. And it also makes you feel like there is, along with that comes blind faith. Like you're not supposed to question God because that's heresy, which is uniquely bad. It's like Hassan once said, meta societies are under constricting material circumstances that have not let them mature on their own. If Europe was able to shake off conservatism, to some extent, Arabs and Muslims can do it too, even if they get the same stability, because progressive movements in Muslim worlds have existed even with the material conditions in the region. Correct. Absolutely correct. 100% correct. I mean, do I really need to pull up the fucking photo of Iran again? Many such cases of Muslim Iranian women in a Muslim country living pretty fucking well. Taps the photo. Yeah, you can have progressive movements, and you can even have progressive movements under Sharia law, right? It doesn't innately mean bad. And the only reason I'm pushing against this, despite being someone who thinks that, like, in general, if there was a way to stop all religion ever, past, current, and future, I would do it under law. Yeah, I just say Sharia law because it's what people understand, just like people say chai tea. But anyways, you can have that same progressive movement, okay? You can have the same progressive movement. There's nothing innately worse there's nothing innately worse in Islam that you can't have progressive movements. Just like there wasn't anything innately worse in Christianity, and that's why a lot of countries that used to be fucking run by popes and kings and queens that were divinely, like, ruling the classes beneath them, they were able to have eventual progressive movements. Shakira law. Stop. Anyways, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Believe you, you are still a specially designated global terrorist by the United States with a $10 million bounty on your head. Your group is a prescribed terrorist.
And yeah, many abolitionists literally use their Christian faith to justify the dissolution of slavery as an institution, just as they used it to justify it as a tool. Exactly. And I only want to push against the idea that like Muslim rule is uniquely more evil and regressive than like Christian rule. Because it's a very pathetic propaganda talking point that the West loves to use.
Terrorist organization by the United States, by the UN, by the EU, and others.
I say to people, don't judge by words, but by actions. I believe the reality speaks for itself. These classifications are primarily political and at the same time wrong. I define a terrorist as someone who intentionally kills civilians, harms innocents, or displaces people. If we're being honest, many of the wars waged by major powers in Arab, Muslim, and even non-Muslim countries have involved the deliberate killing of thousands, the destruction of homes, and the displacement of millions. Even the regime itself is guilty of such actions.
But the US and others would say is that you were parts of groups that did exactly that.
Personally, I have not done these things. The situation must be understood in its historical context. There was a massive war in Iraq that deeply stirred people's emotions, prompting many to go there. The circumstances of that war led people to various places, and my path led me to one of those locations. Given my level of awareness and my young age at the time, my
just tuned in and I was like, why is CNN interviewing Zelensky about
actions
this?
evolved to where I am today. I didn't go to Iraq with those intentions. I went to defend the Iraqi people. When I returned to Syria, I didn't want to bring what happened in Iraq into Syria. That's why there were disagreements between us and ISIS.
People would be wondering why you've agreed to speak with us.
What is happening in Syria is significant for the entire world. This event has positive repercussions globally because under the regime's rule...
This is insane. Syria's now deposed President Bashar al-Assad and his family have arrived in Moscow, where Russia has granted them asylum, according to Russian Channel 1 citing the Kremlin.
Rule, Syria became a source of concern and trouble for everyone. Stabilizing Syria will bring many people back. Today, in the liberated areas, about 1/3 of the population lives in camps, approximately 1.5 million people. I believe we can soon reach a point where there are no camps. With the rehabilitation of the liberated areas, people will return to their homes. Many refugees in Turkey will likely return, as will a significant number of refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. Even refugees in Europe may return to rebuild their country.
A fascinating interview there. I want to thank Joanna Karatse and her crew for that exclusive.
I'm looking at this one chatter. All right. All right.
I've
I want to
only
see.
been a chatter for a short amount of time, but I just wanted to say that I really appreciate your takes, insights, and humor.
Aww.
So keep it up.
Thanks.
Gee, I'm glad I found you.
Thanks. It's nice of you. Dono. W. I don't know why Twitch doesn't show me the alerts for these things anymore. Twitch like broke. Dumb username, thank you. Thank you for the dono. Thank you. Also, and one, thank you for the dono as well. I don't know why it didn't show me this. Okay. Let me just see if there's been any recent live updates.
We were forced to torture each other, and in some days we were forced to choose one of us to be executed every day in a place where nobody wants to die, and then we have to make a lottery to see who is going to die among us. So the joy is incredible, and I'm very optimistic about the future of Syria, because after 14 years of fighting, 14 years of the world staying silent about what's happening in Syria, letting us suffer alone, fight alone, hope alone, dream alone, struggle alone, we are victorious today. We win this war against the dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad, and in the future we'll be winning all the possible potential fights for us to build a country that we can be very proud of. A country where we have freedom and democracy, where every Syrian could live, regardless of their religion or sect or color. All of them, they could live and be respected by each other, but also by the law that does not discriminate and doesn't divide between people. So I am extremely happy.
We know, of course, that Bashar al-Assad was implicated by a UN inquiry in 2013 in war crimes, crimes against humanity, that the UN official High Commissioner for Human Rights at the time said implicates the head of state, people at the government, the highest level. But just so people understand what you went, I mean, when you translate that down into the personal level for someone like you, explain to us why you were arrested and what system of justice, if there was any, that you could avail yourself to when you were arrested.
So Assad isn't good, but is the new regime going to be better? Sorry, I'm uneducated on this topic. Very low percentage that the new regime would be better. But, you know, we can we can cope. The problem is that this is regime changes tend to not be smooth transitions. This is true of basically all regime changes. But the hope is that having something that isn't a dictator would be better. Bad train wreck. Thank you for the gifts up to United to Healthcare City. Yeah. Thank you.
I was 15 years old when I was taken to prison. I didn't know why they took me. I joined a few protests before, even though I didn't understand what sort of freedom they meant or democracy or what corruption meant. At that time, I was too young to understand it, and I was so severely in love, actually, with a girl that I couldn't think about anything. But I joined because it was so fun to be with thousands of people on the street. Everyone I knew was there. It was like a party.
Were you ever officially charged with anything?
Well, under torture, I was forced to give false confessions that I killed officers and have weapons, and I spied to the U.S. and Al-Qaeda and Israel. But that's, you know, false confessions you give under torture because you want the pain to stop. However, when I met the judge for around 3 to 4 seconds with my eyes blindfolded and my hands tied behind my back and not seeing the judge, he asked me, "What's your name? How many have you killed?" I said, "None." And he said, "Leave the room." Then I was sentenced to execution. Luckily, I was smuggled on my execution day because I had the most wonderful mother you could ever imagine.
And that was your process.
Isn't this new moderate tone kind of like the same moderate tone that the Taliban had when they took over Afghanistan? I remember those interviews they gave and some people were coping. Yeah, so like when you have a ruling body that exists and has existed for decades or sometimes like centuries, people will take anything over that because they're so used to that. They will just, anything feels better. And the hope is that the new regime change, regardless of how bad it is, at least provides a way for people to perceive a future that isn't just the same thing over and over again. And usually with regime change, the people who are the most successful at overthrowing a government are not going to be the most successful at running a government because those are different skill sets, right? Successfully pushing Assad out does not take the same skill sets as like running a country well. And the goal would be that everyone is behind these people, regardless of how extremist they are. And when they prove to be inept at running society, at running a nation, that eventually you could have progressive change from there. Now, of course, the bigger problem is we haven't been able to really see it play out because all of these countries are super war-torn and all of these countries have immense Western intervention. But that's the goal. Also, yeah, HTS and Al-Qaeda are in very different situations vis-a-vis balance of power.
quote-unquote process of adjustment, an appearance for 3 to 4 seconds. One can understand.
There is justice in the Syrian system doesn't exist. It's an intelligence services that run every corner of the country. There's no such thing as justice. If the judge doesn't like your hair color, he could sentence you to execution. You're talking about a system where the regime has killed 1 million people, where women were raped and they give birth to children in cell under the ground, and the kid live for a few years without seeing the sun or the light or a tree or a bird. There is no such thing as justice when it comes to the regime of Bashar al-Assad. So when they took me to the judge, I didn't expect anything else. I didn't expect him to hear my story. He gave me 3-4 seconds to say my name and say the word no, and he didn't even care about anything, because under my...
I mean, yeah, say what you want about Assad, but he was a secular leader of a sovereign nation, which will now be taken over by fundamentalists. He was fighting ISIS in Syria. Falling is in the interest of the U.S. and Israel. That's like... So this is the fucked up thing, right? The desire to be hopeful and have wishful thinking about what this regime will look like after, and that potentially the people who live in Syria get to experience something that isn't a dictatorship sounds really nice. That sounds very tempting. The fact that this will probably become another Western project, not so great. Not so great.
False confession under torture. I was forced to say that I killed endless number of officers, even though I was a tiny little boy.
Given the deep wounds you must carry, does this day mean for you a return to Syria? Will you return to Syria?
The very deep wounds can always heal if you think that everything you suffered for is worth what you got. And I can tell you, all the pain, all the suffering, all the worry, all the psychological pain, all the loss, all the disappointment and betrayal I went through is worth this day. I am extremely happy to see 100,000 of political prisoners being freed, going back to their families, to their lives. And I can tell you, I love my country more than anything. I love my country even though it's burned down to the ground. And we will build it all. We will go back to our country. I think it's the most beautiful place that I could ever be in. I miss my grandma. I miss my sister that I have been hiding for 10 years in Syria because they didn't want.
Syrians have the right to celebrate the fall of the House of Assad without being lectured by non-Syrians about the reality of their future. Maybe some of you need a reminder. Assad wasn't just your run-of-the-mill dictator. Not only did he run police state a frightening degree, but he also burned down his country to stay in power, destroying entire cities and killing hundreds of thousands of Syrians to keep his regime in place. Let people who have had family members murdered, tortured, and imprisoned by the state have a moment of relief and celebration. It doesn't mean that they're naive about Syria's future.
The government to know that she is still there. I miss the house I used to live, to grow up in. I miss the springs of water, the mountains, and I miss the ocean. I can't wait to swim in the Mediterranean Sea in my hometown.
What are your hopes? What has to happen in the new Syria and the order that would equal for people like you a success story?
Yeah, anyone who Putin thinks of as highly is undoubtedly interested in stripping humans of rights. I mean, why do you think him and Trump are such buddy buds, dude? Boss makes $1, we make a dime. That's why we watch Twitch on company time.
What do you want to see? What are the milestones that you'll be watching out for?
There are many success stories that I have already seen. Firstly, the liberation of Syria. And
also, I think that the people who live in the country should be allowed the opportunity to try and improve the conditions in their country. I think they should be allowed to attempt to liberate themselves from whatever rule is oppressing these people. It's also the reason why people don't give a single fuck that CEO got killed. Just because it's not a monarch or a literal dictator that's putting you under their thumb doesn't mean that they're not putting you under their thumb. Who? the healthcare CEO, there's a reason that the healthcare CEO doesn't give a fuck, or no one gives a fuck that that guy died. Because almost every single American. Oh no, I was being facetious, sorry. So sad that he got killed, by the way. Yes. Remember, guys, don't Fed post. It's really bad. It's really sad. Wait, I wanted to pull something up.